We'd like to welcome Lisa Goldberg to the podcast. Lisa is a New York adoption attorney and the founding member of her own firm, Building New York Families. Lisa has stepped back into the role of counsel, and Leslie Silver Hoffman has moved into the role of principal attorney. So my wife Sam and I worked with Leslie and Lisa to complete second parent adoption of our boys back in 2021, and Erica and her wife Laura worked with them for parentage order. Hello, Lisa, and welcome to Unseen.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
And welcome. I mean, Laura and I both, we feel like we're so far ahead of so many people in this process. So we're really excited to have you share your knowledge because I think a lot of this is still a little bit unknown. But first, tell us a little bit about you and your firm and who you work for.
Oh, thank you. So I started my adoption firm, well over 15 years ago now, and it was solely devoted to adoption. Private, foster, step parents, adult adoptions, all things adoption, 100%. I was lucky enough to have two wonderful associate attorneys, Leslie and Vivian Sklar, who helped me along the way and helped us grow. And I am currently stepping back into the role as of counsel, still doing all things adoption. It's our passion. And one of the things that I love the most, I'm here with you today to do, and that's to educate. And I think particularly in the LGBTQ community, it's so important to know and understand your parentage rights and how to establish and ensure your parentage rights. It's just not as easy as assuming that because you're married, there's an assumption, or because maybe you did, one parent was the reciprocal. You really need to protect your rights towards your child and your child's rights. And of course, you all had mentioned to me there's some concern in the community about what's happening now with the Davis suit making its way up to the Supreme Court, trying to overturn Obergefell, and how that might have an impact on this community. So there's a lot to talk about, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy to educate your listeners.
Thank you. Let's start at the beginning. You want to start with Kim Davis? I guess
wanna
she
start
is
with
the
Kim
beginning.
Davis. She's the beginning, right? She's kind of the origin story of what we're dealing with right now and why I think the community feels a sense of urgency and confusion and chaos, to be perfectly honest, because there isn't one source of truth of what we should be doing as parents. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. Can you talk to us a little bit about why this lawsuit is important and how it would trickle down to those of us, even living in blue states, that we think that we're safe?
Right. So there's a few reasons why it is and it isn't important. First of all, the reason that it is currently causing concern is because what happens if the Supreme Court hears this? A lot of the legal pundits out there are saying the Supreme Court is not going to hear this case, and they won't make that decision to hear it until well into 2026, and then a decision wouldn't come down before next summer. But the reason a lot of legal pundits, anyway, don't believe that this case is going to actually be heard by this current court is because it's been kicked by the appellate division. It's been kicked by the lower courts. Let the lower courts' decisions stand. So just for purposes of explaining what this case is, Kim Davis was a county clerk in Kentucky. She, after Obergefell, which is about 10 years old now, and expanded the legal right to marry, she refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples in Kentucky. She was fired from her position. She was sued by a gay couple who prevailed against her and received a jury award of damages for emotional distress and various other issues. And so she was actually sent to jail. She's suing for an abridgment of her First Amendment religious right. And so this is the kind of thing that the court would take up, the Supreme Court would take up when an issue like this has been heard around the country in various other lower federal courts. It's gone up to several appellate divisions, and maybe there's differing opinions in different appellate divisions around the country. So the Supreme Court has to weigh in and be the final arbiter. That has not happened. And that's why a lot of people feel like this is premature. They're going to punt. On the other hand, this is a very conservative court, and they may decide to get in there. There are clear indicators. There are a couple of justices who were not happy with Obergefell, which was, decided before the current makeup of the court. So it could happen. My feeling is, even if they punt Davis's case down the road and doesn't go anywhere, there is somewhat of a groundswell in at least a handful plus states, in their red states legislatures, to try and abridge the rights that came about through Obergefell, right? So it's not going away, this issue. And what that means is there has always been a real push with my firm and with Leslie and Vivian to make sure that, in particular, same-sex couples protect their rights and responsibilities towards their children. Well before even Obergefell, I always counseled potential clients and clients to either do an adoption, or now you have available, at least in New York, and actually in, I think, over 30 states, to get some form of parentage order protecting your rights. Adoption is a legal construct, and what it does is it guarantees you the same parental rights as if you had given birth to the child, okay? Nowadays, you can get a court order establishing your parental rights, which Erica can attest to, that has the same weight and gravitas as an adoption order. A legal order, an order from a court, has to be recognized across state lines. There is a constitutional construct called full faith and credit, which means that a court order is given the same weight, the same full faith and credit in your state as it will be across state lines, okay? This is very different from a birth certificate, or very different from a document issued in a hospital, like the voluntary parental acknowledgement forms that a lot of hospitals, a lot of states are allowing for to establish maternity or paternity. A court order is the key, and I can't stress that enough. And we can talk about parentage orders versus adoption.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, because I remember the night that I heard the news that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died, and it just became clear to myself and my wife, the tide is turning against us. The Supreme Court, as you said, the makeup now is very different than it was back in 2015. So in late 2020, we had a toddler and we had a newborn. He was born right before COVID shut the world down. And so that's when we reached out to you, when we got the ball rolling. And I think at the time, the parentage order, I don't think that was happening in New York yet, because we did the whole second parent adoption with you, which was finalized in June of 2021. I remember, because we had a Zoom court hearing with the judge, and the baby was crying and my oldest was eating toast. And it was just this whole ridiculous little mess of us on the couch trying to get this thing through. But people always asked us, like, well, you live in New York, you're in a blue state, you're both on the birth certificates. I carried one child, Sam carried the other. Why would you need to do this? And our thinking was always, yeah, like, that is all true. And we also have families that support us. Like, we're a very, very lucky same-sex couple, and we feel very safe. Any hypothetical situation we came up with, the answer for us was, what is the most we can possibly do to protect the rights of our children and the rights of our family? Which is why we did do the second parent adoption with you. And it was exactly what our friends who have adopted children went through. We did the fingerprinting, we had the social worker at the house. It was the whole thing, right? So can you walk us a little bit through what second parent adoption looks like, what now parentage order is, if they're both similar, if you go through the same?
Can I just share for a second?
Yeah.
So when Lisa explained the two options to me, and she'll explain it in a second, I think it's really important. I just remember having such a visceral reaction to the adoption process and feeling like, you've got to be effing kidding me. I've been raising this beautiful boy for 7 years and taking care of him, and he has a beautiful life. And now you need a social worker to come into my home so I
Right.
can have legal authority over my own
Yeah.
child. And I just remember feeling so other.
Yes.
And it was so unfair that we had to go through this process. But then, there's thankfully, there's a simple way of the parentage order, which was,
You didn't have to have a social worker in your house. By the way, mine was
mean,
very kind.
which is great, but it was just the principle for me.
It
Because,
is.
I'm stubborn as shit.
It
And then
was. It felt really shitty, but at the
invasive.
same time, like, how many shitty things do we do to protect our
It's
kids
true.
and our family? Like, we're moms. Half of the stuff we do is
It's true.
right.
It's true. But
Anyway, so walk us through that. Okay.
So everything that you've raised, I've heard over and over and over again from parents in your similar situations. And they're really valid issues. And these are the pros and cons. The most important thing is that you have to do something. And even before Obergefell, I would be so happy when families would call me to do a step parent or a second parent adoption. Because whether you're a heterosexual couple or a same-sex couple, things happen, right? People get divorced. People have accidents. People pass. And you get along with each other's families. But God forbid something happens to one of your beautiful families and your ex-partner or your former partner's family decides to sue for custody. Do you really want to have to go to court and fight for your rights for your child? Why not just quickly do this process? It's such a streamlined, simple process. And by process, I'm talking to both about adoption and the parentage orders. There's no question that getting a parentage order is faster, less expensive, and less invasive. And I'll explain why. However, they both get you to the same place. You will never have to fight for custody of your child. You will never have to fight for visitation of your child. It's just why someone wouldn't do it is inexplicable to me. Okay, this is your child. You never want it questioned. And whether the Supreme Court looks like it does today or like it did 10 years ago, you just want to protect those rights. So there's two ways to do it. You can do it with adoption, and just keep in mind that every state is different. Adoption laws are state by state. New York is wonderful. In New York, you can do an adoption whether you're married or not married if you're in a committed relationship, okay? And it's called a step-parent adoption if you're married. It's called a second-parent adoption if you're not married, but in a committed relationship, living together, raising the child together. Most people want to call it a second-parent adoption because everyone thinks of Cinderella story with the step-parent adoption. It's really the exact same thing. It's just the nomenclature. Adoption means a step-parent or a second-parent adoption means you're going to have to get a home study, which means a licensed social worker versed in adoption. Generally, they are very lovely to work with. This is what they do. Many of them are adoptive parents themselves, at least the ones I've always worked with. You are going to have to get fingerprinted. You are going to have health, an updated health record. You are going to have to show your financial records, et cetera, et cetera. The court has to go through various steps with you. You have to prove to the court that this is a safe environment for the child, for the court to order a step-parent adoption. And so it costs a little more. You have the additional costs of the home study, et cetera. It takes a little longer. There's a little more hunting and gathering for documents. And, I guess those are the negatives, and it's more intrusive. As Erica was saying, it's like, hey, this is my child. And a lot of times with reciprocal in vitro, I have the genetic parent, but not the gestating parent. The genetic parent is actually the one doing the adoption of her own child. So it's crazy. But you end up with that court order that's incontrovertible, which is so important for your child.
Can we talk a little bit? Because this is what was very interesting for me when you walked me through this process, our first phone call. I have a lot of straight coworkers who are incredibly supportive of me and my family, but they have no idea of kind of the intricacies of this.
Right.
And their first question is, but you're both on the birth certificate, so why does it matter? Can you talk us through why that actually doesn't matter and why the court document is such an important factor in this?
So a birth certificate is, of course, helpful when you're taking your child to DMV or getting a passport or trying to make medical or school educational decisions for your child. Of course, it's recognized, right? But it does not have to be honored state to state. It is issued by a clerk. It is not a judicial order, and it is not protected by the Constitution the way a court order is protected by the full faith and credit clause. Okay. So a court order is just, think of it as a hierarchy. It is just a much stronger, more protective issuance of your legal rights than a birth certificate. What a birth certificate does is it shows your intent. So if you end up in litigation down the road against your co-parent or your former partner's family, if something happens to your partner or your spouse, if you end up in litigation, and this has happened around the country, a birth certificate shows your intent and your former spouse's intent or partner's intent that you co-parent, that you both be parents of this child. So it has a lot of weight. But do you really want to be dragged into court? And that's what I keep going back to. Do you really want to have to prove your legal status vis-a-vis your child? If you have a court order that says you are this child's parent, that's that. You have a court order that says you are this child's parent. It's very different from having a birth certificate, which will help you in court. Okay.
So, what is the parentage order and how does that work?
So before I tell you the parentage order, I kind of said some of the, I guess they're not really cons to a step-parent adoption, but some of the things to consider is that you have to do all of these steps for an adoption, right? One thing to keep in mind, and that a number of people have leaned in that direction because of this, is one of the pros to adoption or step-parent or second-parent adoption is that it is universally recognized, right? Just the word adoption, everyone knows what that means. Whether you're in a hospital or a school setting or at a DMV, if you happen to be traveling and you're out of the country, if you happen to be traveling and you're in Kentucky, not to pick on Kentucky, but if you're in a red state, everyone knows what adoption means. Everyone understands that that is a legal court order that you have been found to be this child's parent. So that gives a lot of folks a level of comfort that a parentage order may or may not give you. Parentage orders are relatively newer constructs. Again, they are a court order and they really have the same gravitas as an adoption order. But not everybody knows what it is or what it means. And they are not legislated for in every state. I think it's something like 30 states domestically now have some form of court recognition, court parentage orders. And they might be called something different from state to state, but they're some sort of court order acknowledgement of parentage. Okay. During COVID, Governor Cuomo signed into law the Parent-Child Safety Act or SAFE Act, which established the parentage order for New Yorkers. So it's really not that old.
At least he did something right.
I'm not weighing in there. So basically, it gets around the fact that we have a marital presumption. If you're married and you're heterosexual, there's a presumption that the husband is the father, right?
Right.
We don't have that same presumption if it's two women or two men who used a surrogate. There's not necessarily the genetic link, right? Anytime assisted reproduction is in the equation, then you can avail yourself of a parentage order. And what it is saying to the court is, we have this child together. It is our intent to build our family together. It is our intent to have a legal recognition that we are both parents. And it is significantly less intrusive, at least in New York. Again, every state is different. And so from state to state, there may be different requirements. But in New York, for a parentage order, you do not have to have a home study. You do not, so it's less expensive and less time consuming. You do not have to get fingerprinted. We basically give the court a number of documents which show that you purchased anonymous sperm, so there is not a father out there who we have to get consent from, right? And that you both sign documents attesting to your intent to parent. And we have affidavits from the cryobank and affidavits from your fertility doctors that show that we have the sperm donor going to this procedure resulting in this lovely child, right? So we just have to sort of show the chain of custody for the court.
Okay.
So it's mostly documents that your lawyer will prepare, that you'll sign, you'll have notarized, we submit it to the court. And the interesting thing that we have found in the last few years is that a lot of the courts, because this is so new, for the first few times that we were filing, didn't know what to do with them.
Mhm.
Some of the courts were actually docketing our filings as a paternity suit. Some of them were docketing them as adoptions. Others, I mean, it's just been all over the roadmap. And some courts will require you to come in, and it takes 2 seconds to order the parentage order. It really only takes 2 minutes to order the adoption. But other courts were doing this virtually by hearing. Some courts never even scheduled a hearing, but all of a sudden in my mail, I got the parentage order with no notice that the court had even considered our filing. So it was really all over the place. And we were the first to file these parentage orders in a number of courts in New York. So it's been just kind of fun figuring out with the judges, how are you managing this? How are you going to do this? Can we do it virtually? Because that's even better. My clients don't have to take any time off of work.
Right.
So there's a lot of pros to it. It's much faster. It's much less intrusive, and it's much faster. And in fact, it really is the same level of security for you as a parent vis-a-vis your child. The only, I don't even want to use the word negative, but the only difference really is your level of comfort in having a parentage order versus having an adoption order, just because one is more, as I said, universally understood and recognized.
Right. I mean, for me, I'm a trendsetter, so I was all about the parenting.
There you go.
But I have to say, before I talked to you, I talked to 3 different lawyers in New York. I have this beautiful company benefit where I get this free attorney situation. I talked to 3 people. They were all men. They had no idea what I was talking about. They all gave me the advice of everything's fine. You're fine. I don't understand. Like, you're good.
Oh.
And I knew by having Laura as my friend, and she's like, girl, that's not the way it goes.
These men don't know nothing.
They don't know nothing. That's crazy. This is not okay. Talk to Lisa. And then I reached out to you and realized that, at least for folks who are listening, the path of least resistance, just trying to talk to a couple of lawyers, and they're going to give you the advice that they know because they're not aware of what's going on. It may not just be in their purview. Like, double click into this because it's very important. And it was such a relief to be able to talk to you and your team to know that not only was there a solution, but it was going to be fast. It was incredibly painless for us. All we had was our friend and neighbor come over, who's a notary, who did her thing. It was in like maybe a 3-month period from start to finish. And I think it was really easy. So I think for folks
So
who are
happy
listening,
to hear that.
yeah, it was a very, very good experience for something that made me wildly uncomfortable, feeling like the person who did not give birth to the child, I may not have rights in this ambiguous period of time. So yeah, I encourage people to not hear the first thing and hear it as fact, and do a little more research and find someone who knows what they're talking about.
So I have a question. I carried Quinn with my egg. Sam carried Simon with her egg. So we essentially, I think how it worked, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, I kind of gave up parenting to Quinn. She gave up her rights to Simon, and then we both adopted our boys back together.
No. You never gave up your rights. You never
Okay,
gave
so
up.
I thought I had to sign something over to her, right? So to
No,
have my-
you consented to allowing her to
Okay.
adopt, to allow her to co-parent as a as a legal parent, but
Okay.
you never had your rights terminated.
Okay.
Ever. The issue is that whoever gives birth, the gestating parent, is on the birth certificate, is recognized as the legal parent, even if your partner is the egg donor.
That's what I was going to say, because that's the situation you are in.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. Reciprocal in vitro, which I think actually is so cool.
I have plenty of eggs, but no desire to give birth. So it
Didn't
just
think
worked out.
I didn't think we were
There
both
you
going to
go.
have to do IVF. So also, Simon's head was enormous, and he was a 10-pounder. So I'm glad he came out of her and not out of me. Okay, so you said it took you
Right.
about, and I know we're talking about New York here, and it differs in every state. It took you about 3 months for your parentage. I think it took us longer. Again, this was during COVID, to do the adoption. So what is your ballpark for parentage takes about this long, and adoption usually
Right.
takes about this long?
Well, I'll say this. COVID was a whole different animal because the courts, were not working at full speed and they didn't have full staff. And it was a very different time. I will also say that for the New Yorkers listening, every county is different, right? We love the court in Kings County in Brooklyn. However, oh my God, so slow. I could do 5 parentage orders and step-parent adoptions in Dutchess. For every one I can get done in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So it really depends on where you are and how busy the court is and which procedure you go through. Adoption takes a little bit longer than a parentage order, especially because in every adoption, you do have to have a hearing. It's a quick hearing. It's a 5-minute hearing at most. It's basically the judge doing a meet and greet with you. And sometimes they're even in a judge's chambers and they're very friendly. And they're very warm, and they're always happy to see our adoptive families, whether it's a step-parent adoption or a private adoption or a foster adoption or an adoption of a 35-year-old adult. They're always happy to do adoptions because the judges in family court really hear some very sad things all day long, except for when it's an adoption.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take long to do an adoption. It just takes long to get to the point, the end point when we have the hearing. It should not take more than 3 or 4 months. It can take closer to 6, depending on how backed up your court is, okay, what jurisdiction you're in. Parentage orders can be super fast from the time you hire your lawyer to the time the judge sends us an order in the mail and never even communicates that they want a hearing. It could be 2 to 3 months. The thing that has slowed us down with parentage orders is getting the affidavits back from your doctors and your cryobanks.
That was our
I mean,
delay. Yeah.
Oh, God. I mean,
Cryobank, paperwork. Thank God I never have to do it again.
yeah, you have a little bit more control over your paperwork with an adoption. The other piece of an adoption is you have to have letters of reference, which is also kind of crazy.
I forgot about those.
Yeah,
We did do
especially if you've done a reciprocal in vitro where it's like, hey, this is my genetic baby and I have to get letters of reference that I will be a good parent. It is crazy. It's crazy, but the end result is so important and it's just worth it. So whether you do the adoption or the parentage order, it's so worth it. And the other thing I will tell your listeners is this doesn't mean you don't have to go the other extra step and get a will. Do a will.
Great.
Do everything.
That was going to be my next
protect your
question.
children. Yeah, that a parent needs to do. It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to do these things.
So what other things outside of a will? I'm hoping everybody's familiar with under the desk news, huge TikTok/Instagram star, but they gave like 30 different items that you should be thinking about.
Who should be thinking about?
Same-sex couples and their children. I know wills are super important, but wills, like when you say will, it sounds ambiguous. Is it a living will? Does it have to be notarized? Is it something that you just write on the back of a napkin and say, I leave all my crap to this person? What is really important about, from your point, the legality of how we should approach this to make sure that we're doing the right thing?
Well, I will say first that I'm not a trust and estates attorney. It's been, I'm not even tell you how many decades since I did T&E law school. But there are LGBTQ specialized attorneys in New York and in every state. So just like adoption or parentage, find an attorney who specializes in this area. not your uncle's neighbor who's been an attorney, it's kind of like going to a general practitioner doctor for a broken leg.
Mhm.
Go to a specialist. Okay. Go to someone who knows what they're doing. A will is great, but if you've established your legal parentage in court, your child will have a right to Social Security survivor benefits. Your child will have a right to inherit under your state's inheritance laws. Okay, so your child is already protected once you've done one or the other of these procedures to establish your parentage rights. The will is sort of the icing on the cupcake. Okay, the will is it's just as important for you as for a heterosexual couple. If you want to make certain intentional wishes clear, then put it in a will. And I'm really not going to weigh in on the napkin versus, I think that the important thing to do is to consult a specialist and get it done properly and have the proper notary, et cetera.
Great. All I can say is whoever reads my will is going to have a fun time because it is not, it is
Sam
a
and I are
journey.
working on them. So just shout out to all the people I'm related to. If something happens, figure it out.
And actually, if you reach out to us or to Leslie, we have a list that we can share of some local attorneys that we've
Amazing.
collaborated with
Awesome.
who are wonderful. There's a couple of fellas in Brooklyn who they're terrific, and they do specialize in the LGBTQ community, doing and estates and all of that.
I feel like I probably Googled LGBTQ adoption. I think that's probably how I found you because, you reach a certain point in your life where I'm like, I only want female doctors. I want to work with people who are going to be supportive of my family, right? Like, as you said, I'm not trying to call some random person that used to be friends with my sister that was an attorney, right? You want to work with people who know what they're doing and who are there to serve your community. And so I actually want to backtrack for a moment because after my wife and I did second parent adoption, or we call it step parent adoption, right? We're getting all it. We got it so wrong.
As long as you have that order, you can call it whatever you want.
We have the adoption order. So we had shared it on our family Instagram page, and you probably got so many emails and calls from friends and people who followed us at the time asking us, why do I need to do this? Do I need to do this? And as you said tonight, yes, absolutely you do. Here are all the reasons. And so a lot of people asked me about costs associated. So again, I know this would be a ballpark, and I know that we are working in New York State, but I always told people it depends how many kids you have. I think it's going to be a few thousand here or there. So can you give us a ballpark idea of financial investment? Because not everyone's in a position where they have a few $1,000s lying around, but they really want to protect their family, right?
Right. Well, it's very difficult to say what other lawyers will charge. I will go back to what you said earlier about the lawyer who said, you're fine, you don't need to do this. It's, again, so important to find a lawyer who specializes in this area, in adoption, in parentage orders. In all fairness, parentage orders in New York are only a few years old. And like I said, literally, we were the first ones to file for a parentage order in multiple counties in New York. So not only are a lot of lawyers still playing catch up, but even the judges were sort of like, okay, I've never looked at this before. But no lawyer should ever have said, you're fine, you don't need to do anything. Oh, you're married, you're fine. It's just short-sighted. It's not safe because things happen. People split up.
Mm-hmm.
I had wonderful clients who did a step-parent adoption with me, two wonderful women of their first child. We were going to do the second child, and they split up. And I kept reaching out to them because I was like, can we still do this? And I never heard from them. I don't know what happened, but they never protected this other parent's rights towards that child, and they divorced. So I don't know, but I mean, it happens. I can't speak to everyone. I know that we set it up so that the parentage order was slightly less expensive than the step parent adoption because it was a little bit less work for us and less of a time commitment. We knew we wouldn't necessarily have to go to court, which takes a half a day for us, depending on how far away, et cetera. So I think you probably should assume that you're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of $4,000, maybe between $4,000 and $6,000. I really hesitate to say. We also always charged a flat fee, so our clients kind of knew up front what to expect. A lot of lawyers prefer to charge hourly. So, the best thing to do in any kind of situation like this, whether it's a private adoption or a step-parent adoption or a parentage order, is to educate yourself. And there's no reason that you can't speak to more than one attorney. Take a few minutes out of a couple of different days and call and see, oh, I connected with this person, but he or she's a little more expensive. Or, oh, this one was a little less expensive, but I'm not sure he or she knows what they're talking about, or if they've even ever done this before. Or they, by the way, never even mentioned that there was another option besides adoption. So, get comfortable with the person you're talking to. Make sure they know what they're doing, that they do this not just as a little side piece of their practice. You don't want to speak to just a divorce attorney about parental rights.
Right.
Because, they come at it from custody. They come at it from visitation. They don't necessarily do step-parent adoptions or parentage orders as a regular course of business. And so maybe they've done one or two as part of their practice, but that's not what you want. That's not who you want.
Exactly. So awesome. This has been great.
This has been great. I thought I knew what I did, and I was schooled in a few things, so thank you.
And I have to say, if anybody listening is in New York, you already know who to call and reach out to. So, Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about how our listeners can reach out to you, Leslie, like where to find you? What's the best way?
So my email, our website is Building NY Families, and Leslie's contact information is on there. I'm not sure if mine still is. Leslie's in the process of changing us over a little bit. I can be reached at Lisa Goldberg Adoptions at gmail.com. I'm happy to have further conversations. People will sign on with Leslie for a retainer, and I am more of a consultation person at this point. Leslie can be reached at Leslie at Building NY Families. But if you go on the website, you'll see her, you'll see me, you'll see Vivian, you'll get to read a little bit about our firm, and all the contact information will be there. And we are all really happy to continue to educate. We love to do consultations. We don't charge for consultations. It's really, really important to educate. And I encourage all your listeners to do that to the point where they're comfortable that they've gotten accurate information.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really
so much.
appreciate you sharing your decades of experience, and congrats on your partial retirement. You've earned it.
Thank you. And enjoy the kiddos this fall. I hope you get some good apple cider donuts this fall.
Me too. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks to Lisa Goldberg and the team at Building NY Families for chatting with us about how to protect queer families and why it's important to do so. If you're in New York and want to connect with the team, find them at buildingnyfamilies.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Pink Robin. Follow us on social media at Pink Robin Shop.